Hey, what's up everybody? Commander Radix here bringing you another video. And it's a nice Sunday afternoon, this 1st of June 2025. And it also happens to be the feast day of Saint Justin Martyr, who is a very important saint to me. I've talked about him a few times over on my X, but I think this year, today, I'm going to reflect a little bit about my relationship with Saint Justin Martyr, and what he sort of means to me, and sort of make a video on this, put it up on the channel, because why not? I need to be working on my ability to make videos, especially shorter videos, since the last two videos were like 30 minutes long. But I want to get back into the groove of making videos, and I think I've talked about how sort of lately my focus is just on making videos just so I can get used to putting that out and not being overcome by my perfectionism, or overthinking about the target audience or anything, or overthinking about themes and aesthetics and all of that. I just need to make, so that's kind of what I'm doing today. But I was reading in a daily calendar of saints, which is a sort of Synaxarion, a mini Synaxarion, from, I think, the Orthodox Church in America. It's written by a priest for the Orthodox Church in America, but it's published by Ancient Faith Publishing, which is for the Antiochian Church. But it has a little bit of information about the different saints of the day, and I think I'll start off, for those of you who are unfamiliar with who Saint Justin Martyr is, I'll start off reading the section on June 1st on Saint Justin Martyr's life. Holy Martyr Justin the Philosopher. Justin was born of Greek parents in the Samaritan town of Shechem, called Flavian Neapolis, about 105. Being wealthy, he had a good education and was drawn to study philosophy. He passed through the philosophies of the Stoics, the Peripatetics, and the Pythagoreans, and became, at length, a Platonist. Musing one day on a beach, Justin met an old man, and they spoke of philosophy and the quest for truth. The old man sowed doubts as to the sufficiency of philosophy, and told Justin truth was to be found in Jesus Christ. Justin said that his words kindled a fire in his soul, and he began to study the Christian faith. He was at length baptized in 133 when he was 30 years old. He felt that philosophy was fulfilled in the gospel, and so continued to wear the distinctive garb of a philosopher. A layman, he nonetheless traveled abroad preaching the gospel. "It is our duty," he said, "to make our teaching known." He opened a school of philosophy in Rome. He wrote 2 apologies defending the Christian faith from pagan slanderers, and the Dialogue with Trypho, in which he debates with a Jew. Another philosopher, Crescens, a cynic, took a dislike to Justin and denounced him to the governor as a Christian. He was brought to trial and commanded to sacrifice to the gods. "No right-minded man forsakes truth for falsehood," replied the philosopher. "Do with us as you will. We are Christians and cannot sacrifice to idols." With others, he was martyred in about 166. Okay, that's sort of the short summary of the life of Saint Justin Martyr. Now, there's a few things I can talk about that I really love about Saint Justin Martyr. I was introduced to Saint Justin Martyr by a friend. I've talked a bit before about my Anglican, very traditional Anglican friend who sort of convinced me about Christianity. But with Saint Justin Martyr, and I kind of talked about this before in some of my other podcasts about how I came to be a Christian, but sort of the step before I became a Christian, that step was probably Stoicism. And I still love Stoicism. Here's my copy of the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, right? A philosophical school that I really enjoyed when I was, I came to the conclusion that the immaterial exists, that it can influence us in some way. I wasn't willing to really dive into any of the revealed religions, right? But I was really into Stoicism. Well, my friend You know, kind of like how C.S. Lewis really loved stories, but said that myths were lies spoken through silver. And then J.R.R. Tolkien kind of convinced him of Christianity by talking to him about, like, the one true myth. Which is kind of funny because my friend likes Lewis much more than Tolkien, but he was playing a very Tolkienian role in the story of my life, in which I was C.S. Lewis. But he sort of talked about how philosophy was fulfilled in Christianity. And he introduced me to Saint Justin Martyr. He told me to read the first apology of Saint Justin Martyr. And I do have a copy of Saint Justin Martyr's first apology here in the Early Christian Reader. This was published by Luke Smith. If any of you know Luke Smith, he's one of my most favorite YouTubers on YouTube. I'm sure he would hate being called a YouTuber, but he walks in the woods ranting about how he hates modernity. But I have a copy of St. Justin Martyr's apology here. I also have an ebook on my Kindle. But yeah, St. Justin Martyr was fantastic. He sort of talks about how philosophy is fulfilled in Christianity, right? He talks about Plato, and I love Plato. I didn't really start reading Plato seriously until after I became a Christian, but I have my big Plato book right here, The Complete Works of Plato, that I highly recommend. I really enjoy. I highly recommend. Hey guys, have you guys heard of Plato? I highly recommend. Here I am trying to sell this 2,000-year-old philosopher. The philosopher, really. But yeah, I kind of, really liked philosophy, kind of looked at it as an alternative to religion. There goes the camera, whatever. But it was Saint Justin Martyr who sort of reached through the immaterial and said, hey, you aren't getting the whole story. Now, I also credit Saint John the Apostle, Saint John the Evangelist for, for also helping me understand, because Stoicism taught me a lot about the things like the Logos, and then my friend was like, have you read the beginning of St. John's Gospel? Like, okay, now you know what the Logos is. Read chapter 1 of St. John's Gospel, because that's going to change how you look at Christianity. Which it did. That's what it did, really. And ultimately led to my conversion to Christianity. But yeah, so St. Justin Martyr is sort of one of those who had that profound impact on me. But yeah, St. Justin Martyr showed me how philosophy is fulfilled in Christianity. It reaches its peak in Christianity. But something Justin Martyr also represents with his life is the fulfillment of Christianity in everything and everyone everywhere. What I mean by that is the text we just read mentions how he converts to Christianity, thinks of the gospel as fulfilling philosophy, and then continues to wear the distinctive garb of a philosopher. He still dresses as a philosopher, which philosophers would have a distinct way of dress in that era of the Roman Empire. But he didn't view his conversion to Christianity as him abandoning philosophy. He viewed his conversion to Christianity as him reaching more knowledge of philosophy. He didn't stop being a philosopher, and that was very interesting to me. The idea that you are called where you're called. God put you in a place for a reason, made you who you are for a reason, and your conversion to Christianity, we can talk about, putting off the old man and putting on the new. There's that aspect to it, right? But there's also this aspect where you are still you. You have still been crafted by God, and you are blooming when you're converting to Christianity. At least you can, right? It gives you the pathway to do that. One thing I really love about the saints is that the saints don't stop being the saints when they become Christian. There are many ways to be a Christian. And sometimes it does involve a repudiation of your previous way of life. If you were in a situation like, for example, St. Mary of Egypt, yeah, it's going to be hard to really not abolish but fulfill that way of life. But in others, like St. Justin Martyr, he has been put on the road towards Christianity through his previous work. And as a teacher of philosophy, he's teaching Christianity. in that capacity as a philosopher. It is our duty to make our teachings known, right? He's a teacher. He is an educator. And that's something that's very important to me. I sort of talked about in previous videos that came out this month or last month about how I am at my core a teacher. I would like to share the knowledge that I have. And here Saint Justin Martyr is doing just that. And he even opens a school of philosophy in Rome, right? But another thing that's kind of similar is how Saint Justin Martyr, Saint Justin the philosopher, he's one of those early saints who really talks about the Logos Spermatikos. And understanding his explanation of the Logos Spermatikos was one of those things that made me realize, oh, when I think about Christianity, in my head, what I think as Christianity isn't really what Christianity is. Christianity, you know, before I was a Christian, I looked at Christianity maybe more as some sort of nice, wholesome, but superstitious. I might have thought about it very, very primitively in a way, but Saint Justin Martyr, he talks about the Logos Spermatikos. This is happening at the same time I'm learning what the Logos is through the Stoics, right? And you know, one of my criticisms, one of my hang-ups with Christianity before I discovered Christianity in full was this sort of idea like, okay, in order to be saved, you have to intellectually assent to the proposition that Jesus is the Son of God. You know, that's how I understood the concept of, you know, you have to believe in Jesus to be saved. And I understood that as, like, you had to, like, literally have the opinion that he is the Son of God. So I'm thinking, okay, what happens if you're born in India, right? Or let's say you're born in, let's say you're born in, like, the year 1200 in deep jungle southern India, or let's say you're like a hunter-gatherer on North Sentinel Island or something, and it's like, what happens to you then? And then it's like, well, GG, I guess you got a bad spawn. Physically impossible to know about Jesus, to intellectually assent to the proposition that he's the Son of God, so I guess you're in hell. That was my understanding before I became Christian, and yeah. But Saint Justin Martyr, he talks about the Logos Spermatikos, you know, this idea that the Logos, there's a seed of the Logos everywhere. The Logos Spermatikos really shapes how I understand Christianity, how I understand the world today. And that's sort of important to me as someone of mixed heritage, of someone who is part Japanese, right? And as nowadays someone who lives in Japan, right? My ancestors on that side of the family ultimately were not Christian ancestors. The society I live in is ultimately not, intellectually at least, Christian, right? Even though it is in some hidden ways, but that's a subject for another video. But the Logos Spermatikos unlocked a lot of doors for me, as well as Thomas Aquinas, but we'll talk about him another day. You know, Saint Justin Martyr, Saint John the Evangelist, Thomas Aquinas, those guys really helped me become a Christian, ultimately. He talks about, you know, I wish more people read Saint Justin Martyr because he says some amazing things. He talks about how, for example, he talks about the origins of paganism. A lot of people say, oh, you know, sometimes you'll get an atheist who says something along the lines of, you know, the difference between you and me is I don't believe in just one more god than you already don't believe. You don't believe in Thoth, you don't believe in Zeus, you don't believe in Hermes, right? And Saint Justin Martyr is like, oh no, they're real. Zeus, yeah, that's real. They're demons, but they're real, right? Which is how I tend to interpret a lot of the pagan myths, you know. There was a video recently about like 20 atheists versus Jordan Peterson or something, and one person sort of talks about how he doesn't believe in some Polynesian goddess or something. They're asking him if he thinks it's real or not, and of course Jordan Peterson can't. What do you mean is? But you know, my answer to that would be like, yeah, it's real. It's real, dog. He talks about things like how Plato and Socrates had access to Moses's philosophy. He talks about how Moses is the progenitor of all philosophy. He is the predecessor of Socrates and Plato, which is fantastic. That's what I like to see. And then look at the strength of Saint Justin Martyr's faith when he is told to sacrifice to idols. No right-minded man forsakes truth for falsehood. Do with us as you will. We are Christians and cannot sacrifice to idols. And then he gets martyred, right? That's impressive. This is a man so committed to philosophy that he is willing to die. He is so committed to philosophy, the love of wisdom, and wisdom is ultimately, you know, the Logos, which is ultimately God, right? He is committed to this. Just no right-minded man forsakes truth for falsehood. That is inspiring. But yeah, Saint Justin Martyr, very inspiring saint for me. You know, maybe we can even think about Saint Justin Martyr as being the patron saint of this YouTube channel, because a lot of the ideas I want to convey in this channel, and the very purpose of me wanting to convey ideas in general, wouldn't have happened without Saint Justin Martyr, right? So do with that what you will. This video is already going longer than I wanted to. It was just meant to be a short little video on Saint Justin Martyr, but here we are at the 17-minute mark on my recording. What saints helped inspire you to convert to Christianity if you're watching this video and you're a Christian? And, you know, this isn't necessarily a Christian channel, but it is going to be what I think is true, which is ultimately going to be Christianity, so whatever. But if you're a Christian, and many of you are, I know, did any saint influence you with your conversion to Christianity, or did any saint touch your life in any special way, like Saint Justin Martyr did in my own life? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to this channel if you have not yet. Follow me on social media for updates, especially X. All the links are in the description, and have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.